"Ma'am, step back. That little girl might bite." The security guard's warning cut through the polished marble lobby of Wardcore Biotech like a whip crack. The normally hushed space snapped to attention. Employees froze as if turned to stone. On the floor, Eva, the pale blonde girl, curled into herself. Arms wrapped around her knees, rocking gently like a fragile leaf in a gale. Her eyes flitted around, wild and distrustful, like a trapped bird. Keisha Hayes stood at the far corner, clutching her mop handle, every fiber of her being watching the scene unfold. As a single black mother, cleaning these halls was her daily routine, but she'd never seen anything like this. In the vast atrium, Eva's isolation tugged painfully at Keisha's heart. "She's losing it again. Get her nanny down here, now!" a well-dressed woman hissed into her phone. No one moved. They could only watch helplessly as Eva sank deeper into panic. A soft, dissonant humming rose from her lips, barely audible beneath the cavernous silence. Her breath quickened, and her small fingers tapped the marble floor in a rhythm only she could feel. Keisha inhaled deeply, then stepped forward, ignoring the guard's frantic glare. "What do you think you're doing? Keep away from Ms. Ward's child. Anyone who's tried before has been fired on the spot," the guard barked. But Keisha didn't stop. She set down her mop, sat on the cold floor a few feet from Eva, and rummaged in her cleaning cart. Pulling out a small bottle of dish soap, she dipped a fingertip into the nearby bucket of water. Gently, she placed her finger to her lips and began to blow. Translucent, pale blue bubbles drifted upward like tiny clouds, immediately catching Eva's eye. Slowly, Eva's breathing eased. Her frantic eyes stilled, following each iridescent bubble as it rose and popped. A few clung stubbornly, reluctant to burst, as if begging for more time. Keisha said nothing. She simply kept blowing bubbles, letting their quiet magic work. The entire lobby held its breath. Gradually, Eva stopped rocking. Her trembling hands relaxed, and the terror that had contorted her face softened into calm. Nobody could believe that something as simple as soap bubbles could soothe the city's most unreachable child. On the top floor, a tall man with hawk-like eyes stood at the window overlooking the lobby. Marcus Ward, the famously icy and powerful CEO, watched with astonishment. He'd seen dozens of top experts fail to reach his daughter. Yet here was a black cleaning lady, an absolute stranger, breaking down every barrier with a handful of bubbles. Marcus frowned, adjusting his tie without realizing it. He felt something unsettling yet exhilarating. Curiosity about this woman who'd accomplished what his highly paid specialists could not. "Sir, the meeting is about to start," his assistant said behind him. "Postpone it," Marcus replied coolly, his gaze never leaving Keisha. "Find out who she is, right now." "Yes, sir." The assistant hurried away. Downstairs, Keisha rose as Eva closed her eyes for a brief, peaceful rest. She wiped her wet finger on a rag, collected her mop, and resumed her work as if nothing had happened, unaware that she'd just moved the heart of the city's most powerful man and that her own life was about to change forever. Marcus Ward never waited for anything. No sooner had Keisha returned to her routine than she received a summons to the executive suite. Whispers followed her through the corridors as she rode the elevator to the top floor, where opulence reigned in gleaming steel and glass. The doors opened to reveal Marcus, standing by the panoramic window, arms crossed. He motioned to the leather chair opposite his desk. "Please, have a seat," he said, voice controlled but frosty. Keisha sat, meeting his piercing gaze without flinching. "Do you know what you just did?" Marcus began, his tone cutting. "I did what anyone should have done, Mr. Ward," Keisha replied evenly. Anyone? You're not one of my experts. What gives you the right to approach my daughter after every specialist I hired failed? He shot back. Keisha drew a steady breath. I'm no specialist. I'm a mother. I know what children need. Eva doesn't need cold expertise. She needs sincerity. Marcus's eyes narrowed. Sincerity? Do you even understand how many people come near my daughter just for money? How do I know you're not one of them? Keisha stood, voice firm. I don't want your money. I clean floors to support my own daughter, Becca. I would never exploit a child for any reason. Silence fell. Marcus had never met anyone who dared speak to him so bluntly and with such unwavering honesty. Ava is extremely sensitive, he admitted, his voice softening slightly. I can't bear to see her hurt again. I understand how she feels, Keisha said, compassion shining in her eyes. Ava isn't a project to be perfected. She's a child who needs love, patience, and understanding. Marcus sank into his chair, hands pressed to the desk as if to reclaim control. Why do you care about Eva? It's not your responsibility. Keisha's tone grew quiet but resolute. Because no one cared for me when I needed it most. I know how crushing loneliness can be. If I can spare a child that pain, I will. Her words hung in the air. For the first time in years, Marcus felt his carefully guarded heart stir. He saw in Keisha something that money and power couldn't buy. Pure, unguarded sincerity. I'll consider what you've said, he finally said after a long pause. But if I discover any other motive, there will be serious consequences. I'm not afraid of consequences, Mr. Ward, Keisha replied, rising. I only care about Eva. Marcus watched as she left and the door closed behind her. Standing alone by the window, he gazed down at the lobby where it all began, a whirlwind of conflicting emotions churning within him. In that moment, he realized that nothing, his own life or Eva's, would ever be the same again. Friday afternoon, Keisha and her daughter, Becca, stepped into the elevator bound for Marcus's penthouse. As the doors slid shut, Keisha caught a flicker of anxiety in her little girl's eyes. She gently squeezed Becca's hand and whispered, Mom's here now. We're going to be friends with Eva. You'll see. You're going to like her. Becca nodded softly, but clutched her little pouch of colored pencils like her most precious treasure. When the elevator doors opened, the two of them paused, overwhelmed by the opulent yet cold world unfolding before them. The penthouse was vast to the point of feeling suffocating. Every surface gleamed perfectly, yet there was no sign of life. The harsh white light from the modern ceiling fixtures only deepened the sense of distance and detachment. Marcus stood waiting by the door, his expression unreadable. He gave a curt nod to the pair, his gaze lingering on Becca's curious little face. Thank you for coming, Miss Hayes, he said shortly before turning on his heel. Eva is in her room. Follow me. He led them down a long, cavernous hallway of stark, white walls, punctuated only by a few pale, abstract paintings. Keisha felt keenly that this place was designed to flaunt wealth, not to welcome a child. There were no childlike scribbles on the walls, no toys scattered about, no laughter echoing through the halls. Here, there was only silence and solitude. Marcus paused at a grand door and pushed it open gently. Inside, Eva sat quietly by the large window, gazing out at the endless skyline of towering buildings. Marcus studied his daughter from a distance, then turned to Keisha, his voice low as if afraid to disturb the fragile stillness. I've tried everything, but she refuses to speak to anyone. Experts say she has a severe emotional processing disorder. Do you really think you can do anything? He asked skeptically. Keisha met his doubtful eyes with a confident smile. "I'm not here to change her. I'll simply sit with her, listen, and wait. If you want instant results, you'll likely be disappointed." Marcus frowned, but said nothing more. He stepped back into a corner of the room, leaning against the cold wall and folding his arms to watch. Keisha and Becca entered the room quietly. Keisha placed herself on the floor at a respectful distance from Eva, then slowly pulled out a blank pad of paper and a box of colored pencils. Becca sat beside her mother and began sketching the first colorful strokes, focusing intently without a word. Eva remained silent, not even glancing their way. But after a few minutes, Keisha heard a faint rustle of fabric. Eva was turning her head toward them. Her eyes were cautious but curious as she observed Becca's bright shapes appearing on the page. Without a word, Keisha gently pushed the pad of paper and pencil box toward Eva, offering a silent invitation. From across the room, Marcus watched, his heart tightening as he saw his daughter, who usually retreated into herself, slowly crawl closer to Keisha and Becca. Eva picked up a blue pencil and hesitantly drew small circles. Her eyes lit up at the sight of color blossoming on the page. Marcus felt his meticulously crafted world around Eva crumble. He'd hired the best experts, tried every modern therapy, yet never had Eva reacted like this. What pained him most wasn't his failure, but the realization that he, her father, was the stranger in his daughter's life. That truth cut into his pride like a deep wound. How could she trust this woman so quickly? Marcus thought, envy and helplessness stirring in his chest. He stood silently, powerless to bridge the gap between him and Eva. After nearly an hour of quiet, Eva abruptly stopped drawing and extended her picture toward Becca. It was a simple but heartfelt sketch of the three of them, hand in hand beneath a sky dotted with pale blue soap bubbles. Marcus was speechless, struggling to control the surge of emotion within him. Keisha turned to him, her eyes gentle yet resolute. "Mr. Ward, this is exactly what she needs. A family, a bit of genuine warmth, not the cold material things you surround her with." Marcus said nothing. Masking the emotions flickering across his face, he gave a slight nod and turned away, silently exiting the room as though fleeing from a truth he was not yet ready to face. But before stepping out, he glanced back one last time. Keisha was still there, kindly guiding Eva's hand as she continued drawing those soft blue bubbles. In that moment, he realized that the emotional walls he'd erected around Eva were being gently dismantled by a stranger he still barely knew. Marcus closed the door softly behind him, but inside, the sound was like the death of his old world, opening, at last, a door to something entirely new, where he would have to learn to see himself and his priorities all over again. Marcus sat motionless in his expansive office, his gaze fixed on the drawing Eva had made. The childlike, imperfect strokes, yet so full of warmth, stirred conflicting emotions in him. He never would have imagined that something as simple as soap bubbles or a few colored pencil lines on white paper could soothe the loneliness in his daughter's eyes. He lifted the paper, his fingertip brushing lightly over the three figures holding hands beneath a pale blue sky, and exhaled softly. In that moment, Marcus realized he had spent too long pinning all his hopes on expensive scientific treatments and top-tier experts, never considering that what Eva truly needed was someone patient and gentle enough to sit beside her and listen to her silence. A sharp knock at the door snapped him out of his reverie. He set the drawing down and called calmly, "Come in." Greg Stanton, Director of Communications, strode into the room, brow furrowed and shoulders tense. Marcus knew Greg well, a razor, sharp man who always put the company's reputation above everything else. "We need to talk now, Marcus," Greg said, without even sitting, his voice cold and reproachful. "Is it that serious?" Marcus asked quietly, watching Greg's reaction. Greg drew a slow breath, fighting the anger simmering just below the surface. "Are you really serious about this? I hear you've got a black cleaning lady working one-on-one with your daughter. Don't you understand how dangerous that is?" Marcus frowned, his tone icy. "Dangerous in what sense, Greg?" Greg leaned forward, hands braced on the desk, his urgency laced with sarcasm. "Marcus, do you have any idea what kind of media fallout this will cause? A cleaning woman, black, no credentials, no training, having direct access to the daughter of one of the most powerful CEOs in the city. If this gets out, I guarantee you'll lose everything. The shareholders won't stand for it." Marcus clenched his hands, struggling to keep his own emotions in check. His voice remained calm, but his eyes were steely. "Her name is Keisha Hayes, and I've seen firsthand how effective she is with Eva. That's what matters, Greg. I don't see a problem here." Greg let out a bitter laugh. "Effective? A few bubbles and some scribbles are effective? You're being naive. The moment the press catches wind of this, it'll become the biggest PR disaster we've ever faced. Have you thought about WardCorp's image, Marcus? You're playing with fire." Marcus rose to his feet, a rare flash of fury in his eyes. He stepped closer to Greg, his voice low but unwavering. "I know better than anyone what my daughter needs, Greg. I'm not going to let our reputation or the company's image come before Eva's health and happiness." Greg didn't back down, his gaze challenging. "Then brace yourself. The shareholders have already started asking questions. People like Keisha Hayes don't belong in our world. I advise you to wake up before it's too late." With that, Greg spun on his heel and stormed out, slamming the door behind him and leaving Marcus alone in the vast, empty space. Marcus felt his blood run cold, his mind whirling with questions he'd never faced before. He walked to the window, staring out at the city where the glare of towering skyscrapers threatened to swallow everything whole. He realized he'd spent far too long living in this cold, unfeeling world, one where power and prestige were all that mattered. Did he really want Eva to grow up that way? He returned to his desk and picked up Eva's drawing once more. Those simple lines now seemed to challenge his conscience. He remembered Keisha's gentle, confident face when she'd stood her ground in front of him, fearless and unwavering. A seemingly ordinary woman, yet stronger than any expert he'd ever hired. Marcus sat down, lost in thought for a long while, wondering who he had become over the years. A father, or just a powerful but heartless CEO? He knew the choice before him wouldn't be easy. On one side lay his lifelong work, his reputation and the company's image. On the other, his daughter's happiness and future, and the trust Keisha had placed in him by stepping in to help Eva. He clenched his fist, determination forming in his heart like never before. He would not allow anything to hurt Eva or Keisha, even if it meant facing challenges he'd never imagined. Reputation or love? What will you choose, Marcus? He whispered to himself, while the city's neon lights blinked indifferently outside, as if daring him to decide. Before the pale morning sun had a chance to burn off the thin mist shrouding the city, Marcus's phone rang, yanking him from the troubled thoughts of the previous night. He reluctantly picked it up, and before he could even speak, Greg's agitated voice cut in, cold and sharp. "Marcus, have you seen the news? I warned you. Now the fallout's here." Marcus snapped open his laptop. Headlines in blazing red leapt off the screen like knives. CEO Marcus Ward entrusts unqualified cleaning lady, to care for daughter with mental health issues, shocking scandal. Billionaire, Marcus Ward, when good intentions turn hazardous? He skimmed the articles, each venomous line wounding him more deeply. Paparazzi snapshots taken in the hallway, showing Keisha tenderly sitting beside Eva, were presented as irresponsible negligence by a man of Marcus's power. He clenched his fist, anger surging. He dialed his assistant in a voice heavy with resolve. "Alyssa, call an emergency board meeting. Right now." Less than an hour later, the conference room crackled with tension. Every eye was fixed on Marcus with blame and suspicion. Greg Stanton rose first, satisfaction glinting in his steely gaze. "See what's happening, Marcus? Our stock has plummeted in hours. Shareholders are calling stop for answers. If you don't act now, the damage will be catastrophic." "What do you propose, Greg?" Marcus asked evenly, masking the fury burning inside him. Greg stepped forward, tone urgent yet laced with disdain. "Immediately sever any contact between that woman and your daughter. Terminate her. Bar her from entering this building. Then issue a public statement declaring we fully rectified the error. It's the only way to salvage this situation." Marcus felt as though his heart had been crushed. He turned to the others, seeking a flicker of empathy, but found only cold, wary faces. They were all waiting on his decision. "Marcus," Greg pressed on, voice smoothing into calculated concern, "think carefully. This isn't just about your daughter. It's about thousands of employees and shareholders relying on our stability. Do you want to sacrifice everything over a moment's emotion?" Marcus fell silent. He knew Greg wasn't exaggerating, yet the image of Eva smiling beside Keisha haunted him, tugging at him relentlessly. Under the unrelenting pressure, Marcus made a painful choice. "All right, effective immediately. We'll suspend Ms. Hayes's contact with Eva, but I will not tolerate any action that damages her dignity or reputation. Is that understood?" Greg allowed himself a satisfied smile and turned away as if he'd won a major victory. "Excellent, Marcus. This is the right call." That very day, Keisha received a terse, impersonal notice. "You are suspended from duty and barred from the company premises until further notice." Those cold words struck Keisha to the core. Not because she feared losing her job, but because she worried for Eva. How would the little girl cope without the support she'd just begun to feel? Predictably, Eva's condition worsened. Without soap bubbles, without the bright pencil strokes, she retreated further into herself. Refusing food, refusing speech, turning away from everyone. Marcus watched helplessly as Eva deteriorated, agony tearing at him. He called constantly to check on her, only to receive guarded replies from the staff. He couldn't bring himself to face Keisha, consumed by guilt. He had promised to protect them, and yet he'd failed. One night, unable to bear the inner turmoil, Marcus drove to the modest apartment where Keisha lived. He sat in his car, staring at the dim yellow light spilling from her window, wondering how she was faring now. He wanted to knock to apologize, but his pride held him fast in the driver's seat. At last, he turned the wheel and drove away into the dark, carrying the weight of his regret. He knew that to truly resolve this, he would have to confront himself and make the choice he'd been avoiding, between the reputation he'd built all his life and the genuine happiness of his daughter, and of the woman he'd unjustly cast aside. But tonight, he wasn't ready. All he could promise himself and Eva was that sooner or later he would have to stand up and face everything, no matter what the consequences. The pale yellow light from Keisha's small apartment still flickered faintly through the tiny window, casting a dim glow that seemed to push back the cold night. Marcus sat in his car, his eyes fixed on that light, each breath growing heavier, his heart weighed down by guilt and helplessness. All week long, the memory of Eva retreating into herself, suffering in silence, had haunted him. He knew he couldn't keep running from the truth. He'd made a grave mistake letting corporate pressure, from Greg Stanton and from public opinion, force him to act against his conscience. But what hurt most was realizing he had driven away the one person who truly could help his daughter. Taking a deep, steadying breath, Marcus climbed out of the car and walked up to the weathered door of Keisha's apartment. His hand trembled as he knocked firmly, the sound decisive but gentle. The door opened slowly. Keisha's face appeared in the dim light, eyes wide with surprise, then narrowing with distance and wariness. "Mr. Ward, what are you doing here?" she asked, her tone colder and more distant than ever. Marcus looked into her eyes, feeling more uncertain than he'd ever been. He was used to having control, but now, standing before Keisha, he couldn't hide his vulnerability. "Keisha," he began in a low voice, "I know I'm the last person you want to see right now, but I had no other choice. Eva, she's completely falling apart." Keisha pressed the door tighter, pain flickering in her eyes. "I warned you, Marcus, but you chose your reputation and your shareholders over your daughter's happiness. Now, what do you expect me to do?" Marcus took a small step forward, his voice urgent. "I was wrong. I was completely wrong. I thought protecting the company's image would protect Eva, but I was wrong. I don't even know how to face myself anymore. I need you, Keisha. Eva needs you. We both need your help." Keisha stared at him, sensing the sincerity in his words, but the wounds she'd suffered were still too fresh, and forgiveness wasn't easy. "You need my help?" she asked, a hint of bitterness creeping in. "Or do you just want to use me as a tool to salvage your image?" Marcus shook his head emphatically, his eyes conveying a truth he'd never shown before. "No, not at all. I'm not here for the shareholders, or the press, or public opinion. I came because of Eva, and because of me. You're the only person who understands her, the only one brave enough to tell me where I'm failing. I admit it. I don't know how to be a father, Keisha. I've never known how to love Eva the way she needs." His humble confession took Keisha by surprise. Her heart stirred, though anger and hurt still lingered. "Marcus, don't you realize that Eva needs more than just my presence?" she said softly but firmly. "She needs you. Eva needs a real father, someone who will listen, who will love her unconditionally. If you keep being as cold and distant as you've been, I can't help." Marcus stood silent for a long moment, her words cutting straight to his core. Finally, he nodded, determination in his voice. "I understand. I'm ready to change, Keisha. I don't just need your help with Eva. I need you to teach me how to become the father she deserves." Keisha studied him, her wariness softening into thoughtful consideration. She knew this promise wouldn't be easy for a man like Marcus, but for the first time, she saw genuine truth in his eyes. "If I come back," she said slowly, weighing each word, "you must promise me you'll put Eva above everything else, above your reputation, above all the money. You have to learn to step into her world, not force her into your cold one." Marcus didn't hesitate. He nodded again. "I promise, Keisha. I will do whatever it takes to make Eva happy again." Keisha exhaled in relief and stepped back inside her little apartment, opening the door wide as an invitation. "Then come in. We have a lot to figure out, and this time, you can't fail." Marcus entered that modest apartment and felt a warmth he'd never experienced in any house before. He sat at the small table opposite Keisha, his heart brimming with resolve and hope. Outside, the night's darkness began to lift, giving way to the first hesitant rays of dawn, a fitting symbol for the turning point Marcus had just made. A decision that would not only change Eva and Keisha's future, but transform his life forever. At dawn's first light, a slender beam of sunshine filtered through the small window, illuminating the room where Marcus and Keisha were still hashing out every detail of their plan for Eva. That fragile peace didn't last long before Marcus's phone buzzed sharply, shattering the calm they'd just created. Marcus glanced at his screen and frowned when he saw the caller ID, his personal attorney, James Wilson. A knot formed in his stomach. He answered immediately, and James's tense, anxious voice crackled through the line. "Marcus, we've got a major problem. Spencer Ward is back, and he's petitioning the court to regain custody of Eva." Those words hit Marcus like a punch. Memories of his half, brother Spencer, wealthy yet utterly irresponsible, the man who'd abandoned Eva when she was little, rushed back like a relentless nightmare. "This can't be happening," Marcus growled, fighting to keep his voice steady. Spencer walked away years ago without so much as a thought for Eva. How could a court even consider this outrageous demand? James sighed, his tone grave. "Spencer's using the recent scandal to go after you. He's accusing you of being irresponsible for leaving Eva in the care of someone unqualified. Worse, public sentiment and the media are rallying behind him." Anger and helplessness warred inside Marcus as he gripped the phone. He turned to Keisha, who watched him quietly, and she saw confusion flicker in his normally resolute eyes. "What do we do now, James?" Marcus asked, his voice low, tensed with fury and worry. "We need to prepare for a full-blown legal battle," James replied without hesitation. "Spencer isn't just wealthy. He's connected, and he won't hesitate to use every tactic to win custody. You need to brace yourself." The call ended. Marcus set the phone down and sat in silence for a long moment. Keisha moved closer and gently laid a hand on his shoulder. "I don't know Spencer Ward," she said softly, "but I know Eva can't live with someone who sees her as a pawn for revenge. You have to be strong, Marcus. We won't let him win." Marcus looked up at her, gratitude and fierce resolve shining in his eyes. He exhaled heavily and began to explain. "Spencer is my half-brother. He's always believed I stole everything that should have been his. When Dad handed the company over to me instead of him, he nurtured nothing but hatred. He married Eva's mother, then abandoned mother and child when Eva was just a toddler. Eva is all he left behind, and now he's exploiting her to get back at me." Keisha listened, her heart aching for Eva. This innocent little girl had unwittingly become the prize in a power struggle among grown-ups. She squeezed Marcus's hand, determination flashing in her eyes. "We'll protect Eva together," she vowed. "I won't let anyone use her. But you have to tell me everything, no more secrets." For the first time in his life, Marcus felt he wasn't alone. This ordinary yet remarkably strong woman was his greatest ally. Over the next few days, Spencer launched a meticulously orchestrated media campaign. Sensational headlines blasted Marcus as an irresponsible CEO who'd entrusted his ailing daughter to someone unfit. Keisha's image was distorted, painted as an opportunist exploiting Eva's situation for personal gain. Public opinion splintered. Some condemned Marcus as a callous father, others questioned Spencer's motives, but those voices were soon drowned out by the media storm. Pressure mounted on Marcus and Keisha. Anonymous threats targeted Keisha, forcing her to face scorn every time she stepped outside their small apartment. Still, she refused to back down. Her heart belonged to Eva, and she was determined to protect her at all costs. Marcus and Keisha spent long, grueling days alongside their attorney, gathering every shred of evidence to prove Spencer was an unfit, irresponsible father. Marcus had to confront a painful family history he'd long avoided. But now he understood that to save Eva, he couldn't run from the past. On the eve of the hearing, Marcus and Keisha sat together, exhausted, yet unbroken. Marcus met Keisha's gaze and for the first time spoke the truth he'd buried deep inside. Keisha, no matter what happens tomorrow, I want you to know you've changed me. You've helped me understand myself, and now I know what I must do, not just for Eva, but for myself. She offered a small, reassuring smile and tightened her grip on his hand. Tomorrow, we face Spencer, she said. We'll show him the real power of love and of truth. They sat in silence, hearts steeled for the fierce legal battle ahead. They knew tomorrow's verdict would not only decide Eva's future, but their own destinies, and the fate of the little girl they both loved so deeply. The morning sun slanted through the courtroom window, illuminating the rows of benches where everyone sat in tense silence. Marcus and Keisha sat side by side, their faces etched with anxiety. Just a few feet away, Spencer Ward and his attorney, Jonathan Reeves, whispered confidently to each other, clearly sensing victory. The judge, a middle-aged woman with a stern, piercing gaze, called the court to order. The courtroom fell into a heavy hush, as though everyone held their breath, waiting to see what would be decided in the next few hours. Jonathan Reeves rose first. His expression was cold and assured as he addressed the bench. Your Honor, we have ample evidence that Mr. Marcus Ward lacks the psychological stability required to raise his daughter, Eva Ward. By entrusting her care to someone with no professional qualifications, Ms. Keisha Hayes, he has jeopardized her mental health. Spencer sat quietly, a faint, triumphant smile playing on his lips as he listened. He had orchestrated this plan long ago, knowing the best way to defeat Marcus was to attack his greatest vulnerability, his relationship with Keisha. Jonathan clicked through a series of carefully selected photos on the courtroom's large screen. They showed Marcus and Keisha in ordinary moments, which his attorney twisted into proof that Marcus had neglected his daughter in favor of an improper personal relationship. Mr. Ward allowed his personal feelings to override his paternal duties, Jonathan concluded in a chillingly persuasive tone, and Ms. Keisha Hayes exploited the situation to gain access to the Ward family's assets. Marcus clenched his fists, struggling to contain his anger. He'd never anticipated Spencer and his lawyer would stoop to such dishonest distortions. Keisha sat silent beside him, but Marcus felt the weight of her anxiety and hurt. When it was Marcus's turn to speak, his attorney, James Wilson, rose to rebut. He presented evidence of Eva's clear progress under Keisha's care, the soap, bubble drawings, meticulous notes on Eva's positive emotional changes. Yet his straightforward evidence was drowned out by the overwhelming media storm Spencer had engineered. As the proceedings began to tilt in Spencer's favor, Marcus felt despair rising in his chest, until a soft yet resolute voice rang out from the back of the courtroom. "May I say a few words?" Marcus and Keisha turned, startled, to see Eva standing there, small but determined. The judge hesitated only briefly, then nodded. "Please, go ahead, Eva." Drawing in a deep breath to steady herself, Eva spoke, her voice trembling but clear. "I know everyone thinks my father, Marcus, isn't good enough, and that Miss Keisha isn't right for me. But you're all wrong. My father always tries for me. He may not be perfect, but he's there for me whenever I need him. And Miss Keisha, She's the only person who really understands me." Eva paused and then turned to look at Spencer, the man she'd once called father, yet never truly known. "And you, Spencer, I don't know you. You never cared about me. So why do you want to raise me now?" Spencer's color drained, but he said nothing. Eva faced Marcus and Keisha again, her eyes softening as she delivered her final, courtroom, stunning declaration. "Ms. Keisha isn't just my caregiver. She's taught me so much. She's been with me when I was sad, when I was afraid. To me, she is my mother. I can't lose her." Keisha pressed a hand to her mouth, tears streaming down her cheeks. Marcus, too, could no longer hide his deep emotion. The entire courtroom fell into an awed silence. Even the judge seemed moved by the little girl's courage. After a long, deliberate pause, the judge spoke. Having reviewed all the evidence and, especially, the sincere testimony of Eva Ward, the court hereby denies the petition of Mr. Spencer Ward. Custody of Eva Ward shall remain with Mr. Marcus Ward. Furthermore, the court acknowledges the important and positive role Ms. Keisha Hayes has played in Eva's care. A collective sigh of relief swept through Marcus and Keisha as tears of joy welled in their eyes. Spencer sprang to his feet in rage and stormed out of the courtroom, his face twisted in fury and disappointment. The brutal custody battle was over, but Marcus knew its aftershocks would linger for a long time. He rose, wrapped Eva in a tight embrace, and whispered, "Thank you, sweetheart. I'll never let anyone hurt you again." Keisha watched the father and daughter, her heart swelling with emotion and happiness. She also knew their fight was far from over. From this day forward, they would face many more challenges. And now, at last, they had a real family bound together to weather every storm. The victory in court had barely settled when a new storm broke out within Wardcore Biotech. Marcus knew that defending Eva and publicly recognizing Keisha's vital role would provoke a fierce reaction from the board, but he had no idea how intense it would be. The very next morning, Marcus entered the large conference room and immediately felt the tension clinging to every corner. Cold, probing stares from the board members pierced him like sharpened needles. At the head of the table sat Greg Stanton, self-appointed guardian of the company's image, fixing Marcus with a look of provocation and reproach. No sooner had the meeting begun than Greg sprang to his feet, his voice icy and determined. "Marcus, do you really think you can remain in leadership after everything that's happened? Publicly declaring a rank and file employee like Keisha Hayes as part of your family is a gross violation of corporate governance principles. You are seriously damaging the company's reputation and undermining shareholder confidence." Marcus met Greg's gaze, fury rising within him, but he kept his voice calm and steady. "I understand the gravity of my decision, Greg. Keisha Hayes isn't just any employee. She's the one who helped Eva through struggles no one else could. I will not sacrifice the person I care about most for the company's short-term interests." A ripple of worried whispers spread around the table. Greg seized the moment, his tone growing even sharper. "The person you care about most? Marcus, this corporation cannot become a stage for your personal feelings. Our shareholders are panicking, and you're the one who caused it. I demand your immediate resignation if you truly care about this company's future." Marcus rose to his feet, the pressure finally boiling over. For the first time in his life, he refused to hide his true feelings from the board. "Resign? Greg, do you honestly think I'll abandon Eva and Keisha simply because of pressure from people like you? I've made mistakes by letting reputation and money dictate my personal life, but I will never repeat those mistakes." He paused, letting his gaze sweep over the shocked, uneasy faces in the room, then continued with unwavering conviction. Yes, I've broken the rules we set for ourselves, but I did so because I can't allow my daughter to suffer any longer. I choose Eva and Keisha over money and fame, over the short-sighted profits you're obsessed with. If you can't accept that, I'm prepared to face any consequences." Greg's eyes blazed with anger and disappointment. He jumped up and bellowed, "Then we'll call an emergency shareholders meeting to decide your fate here. Marcus, you've chosen this path yourself." After that tense meeting, Marcus returned to his private office, his heart heavy but his conscience clear. He knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but for the first time, he felt relief in living true to himself. The door swung open and Keisha walked in, worry and resolve shining in her eyes. "I heard about the meeting. Are you really going through with this, Marcus? You could lose everything over it." For the first time, Marcus's usual cold, authoritative demeanor softened. His voice was sincere, gentle, and profound. "I once had it all, Keisha, money, power, prestige, but none of that made me feel whole. You and Eva are what truly matter to me now. I refuse to go on living a lie." Keisha sat down beside him, her gaze warm but still edged with concern. "Are you sure you won't regret this? Life won't be easy from here on out." Marcus looked into her eyes, his tone resolute and confident. "I'm sure, Keisha. No matter what happens, we'll face it together. I can't, and I don't want to, do this alone. I need you by my side." Keisha smiled softly, a warmth spreading through her. For the first time, she realized she wasn't just a lone woman fighting the world. She had someone who truly understood and stood with her. In the days that followed, Greg Stanton quickly rallied the major shareholders, pushing for an extraordinary meeting to unseat Marcus. Marcus and Keisha knew they were entering a fierce battle, one that threatened not only his career but their family's happiness. But Marcus was no longer afraid. He spent every moment with Eva and Keisha, meticulously preparing to face the coming corporate showdown. Amid the raging storm set to engulf them, he finally understood the most important truth. Only by risking everything to protect the ones you love can life gain real meaning. And now, Marcus was ready for anything, because for the first time in his life, he had experienced the true power of love and sincerity, something no fame or authority could ever replace. The days that followed were heavy with tension. Pressure from the board grew more intense, and Greg Stanton's vicious rumors spread like wildfire. But Marcus refused to hide any longer. He knew it was time to step into the light, to face public scrutiny head on, not just to defend his own honor, but more importantly, to protect Keisha and Eva, the two people he loved more than anything in the world. One crisp morning, the press conference room was packed with reporters and journalists. Television cameras were poised, flashbulbs popping repeatedly, the air thick with curiosity and skepticism. Marcus took the podium, flanked by Keisha and Eva, a living testament to everything he was about to say. He looked out at the sea of expectant faces. Gone was the cold, authoritative demeanor of a CEO. In its place stood a man, a father, doing everything he could to protect his family. He drew in a deep breath and spoke, his voice clear and earnest. "Ladies and gentlemen, today I stand before you not as the CEO of WardCore Biotech, but as a father doing everything in his power to protect his daughter. Over the past weeks, there have been countless false rumors about my relationship with Keisha Hayes. Today, I want everyone to hear the truth." He paused, his eyes sweeping the room, seeking empathy from the crowd. "My daughter, Eva, has struggled with severe emotional challenges since she was very young. I, as her father, became so consumed by work and power that I failed to see she needed only time, sincerity, and genuine love. I hired top specialists, renowned doctors, but none truly understood or helped Eva until Keisha arrived. Marcus turned toward Keisha, who stood beside him, visibly moved yet resolute. Keisha is more than a cleaning staff member. She is an extraordinary mother figure, a strong woman who showed me that genuine love is more important than anything else. When she used simple soap bubbles to soothe Eva's pain and fear, I realized it was I who needed to learn from her. Murmurs died down as everyone listened intently. I understand that publicly declaring Keisha as part of my family has sparked controversy, even fierce opposition within my own company. I acknowledge I've breached traditional leadership protocols, but if I had to choose between protocol and my daughter's well-being, I would choose Eva and Keisha every single time. His voice grew more resolute, confident. I was wrong to let power and prestige cloud my judgment and my true feelings, but no longer will I hide. I am prepared to give up all the glitz, the money, the reputation, if it means protecting those I love most. He gently took Keisha's hand and then Eva's, his tone soft yet unwavering. Today, I publicly apologize to Keisha for the pain she has endured because of me. I want everyone to know she was never a threat. Instead, she saved my family. And I apologize to Eva for not recognizing sooner what she needed most from her father. Then, looking directly into the cameras, his voice choked with emotion. And to Greg Stanton and anyone else trying to use this situation to bring me down, know this: I will not back down. I will protect my family at all costs. From this moment on, I choose to live authentically, for myself and for those I love, no matter the consequences. For a moment, the room was utterly silent. Then gentle applause began, swelling into a wave of support that washed through the hall. Marcus felt a profound lightness in his heart as he turned to Keisha and Eva, seeing tears of pride and gratitude on Keisha's cheeks. In the days that followed, Marcus's heartfelt and courageous speech transformed public opinion. News outlets and talk shows covered and dissected his message, and a powerful wave of empathy from the public began to restore the trust that Greg's malicious rumors had nearly destroyed. Meanwhile, Greg Stanton and the dissenting board members found themselves in an awkward position as the tide of public sentiment turned decisively. But Marcus no longer cared about their opinions. He knew that, regardless of what the future held, the most important thing he had done was stand by Eva and Keisha, two people who had helped him rediscover himself. Now, Marcus was ready for any challenge ahead, armed with the conviction that only love and truth have the power to truly change the world around him. The rounds of applause at the press conference had long since subsided, but their echo still rang strongly in Marcus's mind. Shedding the veneer of corporate glamour and standing up publicly for his family had granted him an unprecedented sense of relief. And from that very moment a powerful idea began to take shape, urging Marcus to create a lasting difference. In the days that followed, Marcus spent every spare moment with Keisha and Eva. Watching each small but steady step Eva took under Keisha's gentle guidance only reinforced his conviction that he'd chosen the right path. One rare, tranquil afternoon, as Eva sat quietly sketching her familiar blue soap, bubble drawings, Marcus turned to Keisha with a serious, determined look in his eyes. "Keisha, I've been thinking a lot about everything you've done for Eva, and for me. I want us to do something even more meaningful, not just for Eva, but for all the children who are struggling the way she did." Keisha looked up, curiosity and surprise mingling in her eyes. "What do you have in mind, Marcus?" He offered her a sincere smile. "I want us to build a special center, a place where children facing emotional and psychological challenges can come to be heard, cared for, and healed. A place that pairs scientific therapies with the kind of genuine compassion you showed Eva. I'd like to call it the Ward, Hayes Center, to remind us always of its true origins and purpose." Keisha was silent for a long moment, tears of emotion welling in her eyes. Finally, she nodded resolutely. "I'll stand by you on this journey, Marcus. We'll build it, for Eva, and for every child like her." And so they threw themselves into the work, pouring heart and soul into founding the center. Marcus mobilized resources from the company. Despite fierce objections from Greg Stanton and a cadre of conservative shareholders who saw the project as a waste of corporate funds, Greg ratcheted up the pressure, calling emergency shareholder meetings and accusing Marcus of funneling company money into a personal endeavor. Veiled threats to remove Marcus from the board circulated at every turn. But this time, Marcus no longer fretted over their barbs. He had made his choice, and he would see it through. Still, the real challenge came not just from within WardCorp. Public skepticism, malicious rumors, and persistent doubts now dogged the project. Major investors withdrew their support one after another, leaving the center dangerously underfunded just as construction began. There were nights when Marcus lay awake, tormented by worries about funding. Yet each time he saw Eva's rare smile or the hopeful light in Keisha's eyes, he found the strength to carry on. Meanwhile, Keisha quickly became the beating heart of the Ward Hayes Center. With her kindness, patience, and authenticity, she created a warm, safe, and welcoming environment for the children and families who came through their doors. Emotional, support sessions using art, music, and even simple soap bubbles produced remarkable results. Slowly, smiles returned to the faces of the children, just as they had with Eva. During those same weeks, Marcus saw not only Eva's transformation, but his own. For the first time in his life, he learned how to be a real father. He spent hours drawing alongside Eva, listening to her fears, and sharing gentle conversations. The invisible walls that had separated father and daughter fell away, replaced by genuine, heartfelt connection. Yet, Greg Stanton refused to relent. He lobbied the shareholders, hosted internal meetings, and circulated distorted documents to prove Marcus unfit to run the company. His tactic was to force Marcus into a grim choice: the center or the CEO's chair. In response, Marcus called a special board meeting to confront Greg and the dissenting shareholders directly. Under the scrutinizing gaze of everyone present, he stood and spoke with calm determination. "I know what you all think of me right now. I understand your doubts and concerns, but let me be clear. The Ward, Hayes Center, is not a mistake or a needless expense. It is the single greatest investment our company can make, an investment in the future, in children like Eva, in our community, and in the very humanity we so often forget." He paused, locking eyes with Greg. "If you cannot support this, then I will resign as CEO immediately. I am willing to give up my position, but I will never abandon my responsibilities as a father or as co-founder of this center." His words landed in the room like a challenge. Some shareholders wavered, moved by his sincerity and courage. Greg stood stunned, realizing that Marcus no longer had a weakness to exploit. After that meeting, Marcus's resolve only strengthened. Though the road ahead remained fraught with financial peril and corporate politics, he and Keisha believed with all their hearts that what they were building was right, and they would press on no matter the cost. Because now Marcus understood that true power does not come from authority or wealth, but from the courage to live honestly and to love unconditionally, and it is that love that will guide them through every trial yet to come. Although the ward, Hayes Center, was up and running smoothly and beginning to win community recognition despite internal corporate battles, financial strain, and initial public skepticism, a vicious article suddenly appeared and rocked everything. The piece ran under the sensational headline, CEO Marcus Ward and cleaning staff Keisha Hayes, a love story or a scheme of exploitation. The article was packed with innuendo, attacking Keisha's humble background and repeatedly questioning whether she was using Eva's situation to advance her own interests. The author even sneered that Keisha had wrapped Marcus around her finger as a ticket into high society. Once again, public opinion surged, malicious rumors exploded, and hateful comments flooded social media. Keisha was dragged into a maelstrom of suspicion and hurt. Everywhere she went, people whispered and stared. Meanwhile, Marcus faced renewed, intense pressure from shareholders and the board, especially Greg Stanton, who seized this new controversy as another opportunity to try and unseat him. Every day, Marcus could see Keisha's pain and the effort it took her to hide her true feelings. He knew how strong she was, but he also understood that invisible wounds can hurt more deeply than anyone realizes. One night, after Eva had gone to bed, Marcus sat beside Keisha in her small apartment. He looked into her eyes shadowed by deep sorrow, and spoke softly but firmly. "Keisha, I can't let you go through this alone any longer. I'm going to face the public one last time. They need to know the truth, and more importantly, I won't let anyone hurt you a single moment more." Keisha looked up, worry and hesitation in her gaze. "Marcus, you've sacrificed so much for me already. I don't want to become a burden. Do you know how harsh public prejudice can be? Can we really make it through?" Marcus gently clasped Keisha's hand, his eyes both tender and resolute. "We will make it through. What matters most to me right now is that you know my feelings for you are no longer just friendship or business. I love you, Keisha, with all my heart and soul, and I will never let anyone or anything harm you again." Keisha stared at Marcus, each word striking her like a beautiful yet poignant melody. She realized she too had loved Marcus for a long time, yet fear and doubt, born of the vast gap between their worlds, had held her back. "Marcus," Keisha said, her voice trembling with emotion, "I love you too. But can we really do this? Our worlds are so different. I'm afraid society's prejudice will tear us and our love apart." Marcus tilted her chin gently, looking into her tear-filled eyes. "Prejudice can't stop true love, Keisha. I've spent my life trying to please society, but now I want only to protect the person I love. Trust me, we can overcome anything." The next day, Marcus held an emergency press conference. The room was packed with curious reporters and cameramen. As he took the podium, the chatter fell to complete silence. Marcus looked directly into the cameras and began, his voice unwavering. "Today, I want to set the record straight once and for all. Keisha Hayes is not someone who has exploited my feelings or my daughter's situation. She is the most remarkable woman I have ever known. Someone who taught me what genuine love really means." He paused, gathering his courage to speak the deepest truths of his heart. "I love Keisha Hayes. Yes, I love her with all my heart, regardless of what anyone thinks or says about us, and I will never allow anyone to insult or harm her again. If loving her is a mistake, then I will gladly live with that mistake for the rest of my life." His heartfelt declaration hung in the air, leaving the room breathlessly silent. Then, after a few seconds, a smattering of applause began, growing steadily until the hall resonated with cheers. An emotional wave swept through the audience, and many couldn't hold back tears at the rare sincerity of a man known for his cool, powerful demeanor. Back in her apartment, Keisha watched the live broadcast with tears streaming down her face. For the first time, she believed their love could truly overcome every prejudice and barrier life might throw at them. Although she knew the road ahead would still be full of challenges, Keisha now carried an unshakable faith that, when true love is strong enough, nothing in this world can stand in its way. The press conference ended, leaving the public with emotions they'd never felt before. But for Keisha, every word Marcus spoke in front of the world was more than an act of bravery. It was the most sincere, profound declaration of his love for her. Keisha knew, deep in her heart, that she no longer had any reason to hide from the feelings she'd kept at bay for so long. That evening, Marcus returned to the little apartment where Keisha lived. When the door swung open, Keisha stood there, silently watching him with tears glistening in her eyes. Neither spoke right away. Their eyes exchanged thousands of unspoken words. Marcus stepped closer and gently took Keisha's hand. "I know you're still afraid, but I promise I will never let you face this world alone again. I want to spend the rest of my life loving and protecting you, Keisha." Tears streamed down Keisha's face as she nodded, her voice trembling but determined. "Marcus, I've spent too much time worrying about our differences, but now I realize the most important thing is that we love and understand each other. I don't want to live in fear anymore. I want to build a real family with you." Marcus pulled Keisha into his arms, holding her tight as if shielding her from every hurt in the world. In that moment, they both understood that no societal barrier or harsh prejudice could stand against the power of genuine love. Over the next few months, Marcus and Keisha experienced the happiest time of their lives. Marcus officially stepped down as CEO of Wardcore Biotech, choosing to leave behind a life of hollow power and glamour to focus entirely on growing the ward, Hayes Center. Their new life wasn't always easy, but for them, every day spent together with Eva and Keisha's little daughter, Becca, was deeply meaningful. Eva gradually blossomed. She became more outgoing, more confident, and began to connect with peers her own age. Becca and Eva quickly formed a beautiful, sisterly bond. Marcus learned what it truly meant to be a father, not just listening, but expressing his love openly and naturally. The ward, Hayes Center, soon became a symbol of compassion, empathy, and healing. Success stories traveled across the community, transforming the lives of countless families. Children who had once been forgotten or wounded by prejudice and misunderstanding now found a safe haven where they could confidently be themselves. But even in this peaceful season, ghosts from the past lingered. Greg Stanton couldn't accept his bitter defeat. He tried one last time to use his remaining influence to undermine the center's reputation. This time, however, Marcus wasn't alone. The public rose up in defense of him and Keisha, recognizing the sincerity and real value the center provided. When Marcus faced Greg for the final time, he spoke calmly and clearly. "Greg, I used to be just like you, believing power and money were everything. But nothing can replace genuine love and kindness toward others. I hope one day you'll find the true meaning of life, as I have with Keisha and my family." Greg stood there silently, powerless, feeling for the first time the emptiness of the cold world of power he desperately tried to claim. Time passed, and Marcus and Keisha proved to everyone that love and sincerity always triumph over prejudice and doubt. One beautiful morning, they held an intimate wedding ceremony on the grounds of the ward, Hayes Center, surrounded by the children and families they had helped. There was no extravagance, just laughter and the heartfelt eyes of those who truly understood the value of authentic love. Marcus took Keisha's hand and looked deeply into her eyes, his voice brimming with emotion. I once thought happiness was measured by money, fame, and power. But now I know true happiness is being here with you, Eva, Becca, and cherishing the simplest things. Thank you, Keisha, for teaching me what life really means. Keisha smiled softly, tears of joy filling her eyes as she whispered, Thank you, Marcus, for having the courage to love me despite all our differences. We will build a happy family together and continue to help those who need us. Marcus held Keisha close and gazed at the radiant faces around them. In that moment, he knew every sacrifice and every trial they'd endured had been worth it. Marcus and Keisha had finally found genuine happiness, one not built on power or wealth, but on honesty, compassion, and true love. From that day on, they lived each day to the fullest, not only nurturing their own little family, but also spreading love and healing to everyone whose lives they touched. Their journey showed us that true strength doesn't lie in money, power, or prestige, but in sincere love, compassion, and the courage to rise above societal prejudice. When we dare to live authentically, each of us can create miracles and heal one another. Have you ever faced prejudice and chosen love over fear? Share your story with us in the comments below. If this story moved and inspired you, please like, share it with loved ones, and subscribe so you don't miss any of our meaningful stories. Thank you for spending your precious time with us. May you always stay strong and steadfast on your journey to true happiness.